Hey, it's Shilpa Bharaskar here, and today I want to tell you about how I started my pediatric practice when I started my practice in Mumbai in 1998. So, I'd been working at a charitable clinic, and it was a place where I worked for free, but it was the best place and the best start I had because I was building my skills on acute prescribing under supervision. So that was a huge learning curve to get that practice of providing consistent results in acutes and picking up those cool acute tools from my mentors where they taught me how to pick great keynotes no matter how a patient presented. And then it was time I decided to start my own private clinic where I started taking my paid patients. So today, I want to start with my first ever case, which came to my clinic in my private clinic. So, a mother comes along with this boy who's 9, and he was sent home from school with high fever, and she got him straight to my clinic. She lived in the same apartment as my clinic was, so she just got in, and he had finished a course of antibiotics just the week before, and he had several courses of antibiotics, and I just knew I had my task cut out. So what's happening here is that, like, the mom's frustrated because this child's been having this fever for a long time now, and it had become much more regular in the last few months. Now, what was important here was to understand what the fever was. Now, the mom actually gave a good history, and she said the child just does not realize that he has fever. The teachers sort of note that the face is flushed and they send him home. So it starts from this head with this flushed face, and I was touching his head. It was hot, the body was quite cold, and he has no thirst, doesn't want any food, and he's in this really dull, sort of listless state that he comes and sits there in the clinic room. So I asked the mother, how did it start? And she said, it starts like it's every month in a way, and the doctors have no clue. It's like pyrexia of unknown origin. But it started for the first time she remembered when he was about 4 or 5, and that was when his grandfather died suddenly. The family was shocked, and he was at the funeral. She remembered he howled and howled, and he wanted to be taken home, and he came down with a fever. But now it's like every month. So this was what I got, the fever totality. I took in my favorite book, which is Bonninghausen's book, and I love the fever chapter in that. His case had a lot of concomitants here. So I took Kate had cold extremities. I took the concomitants of delirium because he was very delirious during fever. He had a red face, he was thirstless, and he had this aversion to food. But somewhere I knew these were like not really, peculiar symptoms. They could be quite common in many other cases. What was really peculiar in him was the start when he was at the funeral of his grandfather. Anyway, I decided to use that in my final analysis. So this is the repertorization that I made, where we all those 5 or 6 rubrics and the remedies that came up. This is the Bonninghausen's repertory. The main remedies that came up was belladonna, brynia, china, opium, lachesis. Now, when my instinct, I wanted to give some result, right? This was my first case. I wanted to sort of get a good start here, and I thought, belladonna is coming up here, and just let's get started. It's like the key fever, the main fever remedy, and that was my thought. But a part of me wanted to just do a bit more research. So I told the mother, can you come back again in an hour or something? And because she'd already given him Panadol. So that's where it happened. And I went and picked up this book called Allen's Therapeutics of Fever. And what is very important in this case is I realized this child, there was something not right here. This state of this child was the peculiar part, and this causative factor when it started was the most important part, and I wanted to make sure the remedy had it. So I'm opening Allen's Therapeutics of Fever here, and I'll show you, we'll compare all these different remedies here, right? So I'm picking up belladonna, and look at this state. This is a very important state. It's adapted to bilious, lymphatic, plethoric constitutions where people are jovial and entertaining when well, but violent and delirious when sick. So this is the belladonna state. Keep this in mind. It's very important that this is the state during fever. Let's go to the next remedy, bryonia. And look at what they write about bryonia. It's a gouty, rheumatic diathesis. People are bilious, exceedingly irritable, inclined to be angry, and prone to so-called bilious attacks. So there is this anger and irritation, which is a very key thing about bryonia. That is the bryonia state. Let's go to the next one, China. Look at China. Adapted to stout, swarthy persons, to systems once robust, they have become debilitated, broken down from exhausting discharges. So it's a broken down, extremely exhausted and debilitated state, mind, body, and soul, right? That's China. Now let's go to opium. This is ailments from insensibility and complete or partial paralysis that originate from fright, bad effects of fright, the fear still remaining. Now this was important. All complaints with great sopor, painless, complaints of nothings, wants nothing. This for me was a very important state, because this is exactly what I saw in the child. He had this shock or fright or something which happened during that grandfather's funeral, and he was howled and he was terrified, and he came home, and then the fever started and he's still going on. And then you see that he just is in this complete dull, listless state, doesn't even know that he has fever. He doesn't ask for anything. He doesn't complain of anything. He was just sitting there in his own world. That was the state which struck me. So belladonna has violence, bryonia has irritation, China has broken down state, but opium has this complete sopor, complete painless, wants nothing, and has ailments from fright. This was what really made me give him opium. And so that was what was important in his case, and we gave him opium 200. The fever came down in about half an hour of giving him the remedy. His appetite came back, and he remained alert throughout the day. That was very important. So the state was changing. That is the key to remedy working, because the fever would go up and down, but if the alertness remained, that was what I told the mother to wait and watch and see what happened, and redose only if that dullness comes back, that painless sort of stupor comes back again. And that was what we did. So it did come back next month, but his state did not change. So I think what happened there was we were using opium only when the state was changing, and he repeated opium with other acute complaints. He had some bronchitis and wheezing, and in about that fever did not come back after that, after the second month, and he changed, his state changed, and he went back to his state of the child he was before his grandfather died. So that fear, actually, that state actually reversed. So that was the most important thing here. So this was the case which was the highlight for me, and it was something which just gave me that confidence to start on. And what happened next was very important. So this was one case, and it was not the only case I had, but this was a very dramatic and important turning point in my practice, because this mother in no time told every other mother in his class, and the school knew he had these monthly fevers, and my phone did not stop ringing, because suddenly from no patients, I was now, booked in with a dozen children and with all kinds of acutes. And to be frank, I was kind of a bit overwhelmed, because I didn't really want to treat all these acutes, and I'm extremely uncomfortable in a pressure situation. But it was intimidating to suddenly have lots and lots of children with their harried parents with acutes. But this case somehow built my confidence because I knew if I applied my tools well, I could take those baby steps and in no time I would be pretty good at it. And the reality was, I did. I expanded my comfort zone. I stepped out and I took on those acutes and I started helping them with their fevers, their coughs, their asthmas, the acute colics. And that's when it all sort of started to come together for me. And I learned how to work with these acute exacerbations. And, in a few months, I found that I was working now with 20, 30 kids coming for their ongoing chronic complaints because I could manage their acutes in that first few months to prevent those recurrences. So from no patients, I had suddenly built a busy pediatric practice in a few months. And a year later, I found myself regularly treating their moms or their dads or their grandparents. So it was like moving to the next level. So what I did here, if you realize, was I followed this classical path into any homeopathic practice. So if you are really interested in building a practice, you have to start building your skills on how to take care of those acute situations and provide those consistent results that will get people to come back, that will get them the confidence and the goodwill to send you loads of patients. This is like the classical path of any business. So first you work with acutes. You like it or you don't. These are most of the acutes or the acute exacerbations of chronics. You have to learn how to give them those results. And then in the next step is when you start working with those deep baseline chronics of those same acutes as the patients continue with you. And the third step is actually when you start looking at removing the obstacles to cure, because some of the remedies you offer would be blocked. And many patients come with this chronic multi-miasmatic, multi-blocked states where you have to learn how to remove those obstacles to cure. And these are the 3 steps you have to build your kit. And this is how the cycle continues. And you continue to go from step 1, 2, 3, and that's how, and you start building your practice and building your momentum. Because what's happening is you are generating that word of mouth, you're working with those acutes, getting those results, and then you start working on those chronics, get those results, and you start getting more and more, obstructed cases, and you start removing the obstacles and get those results, and this exponentially grows. So practitioners intuitively understand this, especially successful practitioners intuitively understand this. If you have these skills to relieve pains instantly, your patients will love you when you give them those results. It's a huge trust builder. Any painkiller is 100 times more powerful than a vitamin pill. As much as we love preventive care and vitamins, when you give your patients something to take away the immediate pain, it builds a huge bond with that patient, and then you do not need to convince them about homeopathy. They will come back for their deeper healing, and they will remain your patient until healing is complete. No matter how many obstacles come in the way, they will work with you and help you, in that step 3 to complete the process. But acutes are the way to start. They're the greatest way to start a practice. And acutes are easy, but the challenge is, how do you give consistent relief with high success each time? This is where you need to know a range of tools, because unfortunately, and it's the same with me as well, when I started, I was stuck with just one tool, and that's what you learn in school. But the problem is when that single tool does not work, and that's the reason you need to have a range of tools across a whole spectrum of stages and approaches. For example, if this boy with fever did not have that peculiar state, or he did not have, what options would I have had then? If the mother did not give me enough history, what was the option I had then? And there are tons of other approaches and tools for managing an acute, even when there are no symptoms, even when, there is no exciting factor, because not every person or not every patient will have those concomitants. So, And today, many people I consult, they do not come directly to me in an acute. They come with those complex multi-miasmatic states because that's where the practice I've built up to now, when most approaches and most acutes and most chronics are not working. So many of them come with suppressive therapies where there are no symptoms. And I prefer to use homeopathy for their acutes instead of conventional medicines because I want to build their immunity and develop the susceptibility. And the difference is here I have to use some pathological remedies, include some specific nosodes to unblock them, and that's when the acutes start working really. So you have to know what sort of nosodes you can use during an acute state. And this is another learning. So there are loads of different approaches and acute tools out there that you need to implement to get those consistent results with your acutes. And as you continue to use homeopathy for acutes, you provide those results, you get sharper. Your patient bonds get sharper and stronger. And more importantly, you get your chronic patients resolving much faster and much quicker. And the best way to learn is to start learning and connecting with people who provide those cures, wonderful cures with acutes, and start building your toolkit and start expanding yourself, and most importantly start using it on your patients right away. I'm such a big fan of expanding my toolkits for acutes and chronics. And if you want to radically boost your practice, you need to work on providing those consistent results even when your favorite approaches do not work. And it's the best way to grow your business, best way to have a great relationship with your patients. So hope that helps. Hope it helps, to see how to take those baby steps to build a practice. And anyone can do it. If I could do it, I was not one of the only practitioners to have done this. This is the classical path to building a practice. And if you are having a slow practice, or if you are just starting out, this is the way to go. So scroll down, leave a comment, and let me know what acute tools do you use in your practice right now, and what tools would you like to build.